How you doing, brother?
I'm fantastic, my brother, and just thank you for being there, because it's the Underground Railroads and those type of shows, and they never thought 40 years ago they'd be competing with 44,000 internet radios. And that's
Yeah,
why the network is damn near out of business. When I was a little boy, NBC, CBS, and ABC evening news, it was 40 million people for each one of them. Now the three of them can get 17 million.
Actually, the show I did with you last month, it got almost about 500,000 views. So I want to thank you for supporting, a radio station such as myself and helping me grow and expand my views. I really appreciate you coming on the program,
Yeah, thank you much.
But I want to talk to you, Gregory. I always touch on recent events with you just to get your perspective on it. We love your perspective. You always talk about things that I don't hear anybody else talk about. So, I always get emails and people want me to ask, different guests, different things. Some of the emails that I've been getting, and this subject matter keeps coming up. So I say, I want to get Brother D. Gregory's opinion on this. Now, a brother sent me an email, about a commercial that aired. I guess it was on Halloween, where, the most famous basketball player in the world, LeBron James, he was dressed up as a woman. Mm-hmm. Then another brother sent me an email where the Glamour magazine Woman of the Year is actually going to be a black man. That's a transgender, Laverne Fox, I think the person's name is. And it reminded me of years ago when Dave Chappelle went on Oprah, and he said that he feels as though there's a deliberate attempt by the media to effeminize the black male. So I want to ask you, in your opinion, do you think that the media is purposely trying to effeminize the black male?
Yeah, well, I'm 82 years old, and before there was black comics was permitted. Most of your white comics did dressed up like women, from Bob Hope to Milton Berle, and then when the black folks had, it's like, you got a lot of white boys like to hit on black women, so that might be a gay thing in them or what, I have no idea.
Right. Do you think, so in terms of comedy, because, Dave Chappelle was talking about, Wesley Snipes or Jamie Foxx, as in a comedic way, I guess, should we look at it as just comedy, or do you think there's some type of subliminal?
You have to look at it different than that. I just went back to say, go back and look at all the men who dressed up like women. Back then, you couldn't be gay and have a career,
Right.
I have no idea what it is, but I know it didn't just start, and so you see it, and when he said, he's not about to do that, then look at his career.
Right. Missouri Governor Jay Nixon, he's about to, he said he's going to send he's preparing to send the National Guard out on standby.
Look, that happened 2 years ago. Homeland Security, all this stuff we looking at, all it's always prearranged. Homeland Security, and then they cut the governors up in different segments. So he runs the four states, and he get they put billions of dollars to deal with this. Most folks in Congress not even aware of what's going on, but that's there. Here's what we got to look at. One, if black folks said if he's not found guilty, right, there's going to be riots, well, why would NBC run that? Okay? You hear me?
Right. No, I got you here.
Now let me tell you something very interesting. The FBI, Homeland Security, yesterday came out and said that all the cops are alerted around the country. First, there could be attacks on them, and there could be riots going on there. And I said, wait, ho. Every riot that have happened since the 60s, from a cop killing a ghetto dweller, there was never no riots in other cities.
Right.
See, they can take advantage of King and scare white folks. That was Martin Luther King. You know, he wasn't shot by no cop. And so when you stop and think about what are they doing and what are they planning, see, this is what the right wingers been trying to tell us, but they don't have the guts and consciousness to say it. They a bunch of chumps. One day this week, just punch up Senator John McCain. He was sentenced to die by a military court because he was one of the worst traitors in the history of the country. And Nixon pardoned him. Now, he can sit on TV shows and talk like God just sent him down here to bless America. The Democrats don't talk about the Republicans. He got a book where he apologized to his dad for what he did. And he was over in Vietnam. He was shot down, had a broken leg, and he made a deal with General Giap and Ho Chi Minh that if you carried him to the hospital where they would go, he'd tell them everything. And they did, and he did. You know, if you got somebody there in the studio with you now, have them to punch it up. And it'll pop right up. And so what was happening is he was a Navy pilot, and they would take off from the ship. Instead of going straight through to Hanoi, they would go to the left 300 miles, then swing back and come in and catch them from behind. And the North Koreans, North Vietnamese didn't know how they was doing that until he told them. And after he told them what they was doing, the American naval pilots' death increased 67%. Okay, that's John McCain. So he's sitting there talking all that wok, and Americans buying for it because ain't nobody telling them. Nobody telling them who this thug, pimp, punk is. A military court sentenced him to die before a firing squad. And so when you sit and think about all the secrets they keep from the masses, you know, you got this guy that everybody's talking about, this new book about the they call them the Navy SEALs. Let me tell you something, man. Then Loudon was killed, okay, in December '01. All right. All we talking about now is a trick, and I tell people who look for information, punch up two things. About 29 Navy SEALs that went on that raid was killed in Iraq. The 6 that they talked about, they were killed here. And all they got to do is Google, you know, the helicopter crash. 5 of them was on the helicopter crash. The one that got credit for killing him, he was on the rifle range with other Navy SEALs. And he was shot accidentally in the head by a Navy SEAL. There was one article that said Congress demands an investigation of these helicopter crashes killing these Navy SEALs participated in it. And all at once that was shut down, man. You hear no more about that?
Yeah.
You see, it's two governments, and that's what I'm looking at white folks that think they white. White ain't a color, it's an attitude. If you ain't got trillions of dollars in the bank, you can't be part of that. And I've always said, since I found out what's going on, if I ever took over the country, the first thing I'd do is ask black folks to apologize to white folks because we mad at the wrong white folks. The white folks we mad at couldn't help us if they liked us. You got Ku Klux Klan mentalities. You got this punk guy in Ferguson barely can read or write. Poor white boys. And you think they could do what they do if the big white boys didn't okay it? You think, look, white American businessmen are the most powerful businessmen in the world. They decide when you're going to war and when you're not. You think they would stand by and let the Tea Party shut down the government if that's what they didn't want? Huh? This is a game they play. They ain't got no chump change. Let me tell you something. Let me see how money works. If you had $1 million in the bank and we changed that into 1 million seconds, you'd have 13 days. That's what's called chump change. Mm-hmm. If you had $1 billion in the bank and we changed that to 1 billion seconds, you'd have 32 years. Huh? So who wants to be a millionaire? Huh? It's the games they play. For instance, every congressional district gets a piece of the Pentagon money. That's how you make them behave. If you got a little district in Gooseneck, Tennessee, you ain't got no big industry, so they let you make buttons for the military, buttons and zippers. So that's what your county, your piece gets. Now let me tell you something. Out of all the congressional districts, if you take the top 20, talking about money-wise, right? To be in the top 20, you have to have about $19 billion worth of defense contracts, right? Are you ready for this?
Yes.
Out of the top 20 military budgets to the congressional district, if we go down to the top 10, the top 8 out the top 10 is in Democrat districts. See how they play the game? Everybody think the Republicans are fighting for defense and all of that. Number 1 and number 2, big money. Number 1 is in a black district in St. Louis. Clayton, Congressman Clayton. For what's in his district? McDonnell Douglas. Number 2 is the ex-Black Panther in Congress from Chicago. What's in his district? Boeing Aircraft. Huh? If you look at the top white Republican businessmen, they are more Republican businessmen, millionaires, than Democrats. Does that seem like that needs any explaining? Do it?
No.
Okay. White Democratic businessmen in America, there's more billionaires in that than in the Republican Party. See the games they play?
Right.
See the games they play? And so this is a game. And all at once, when you look at, so if we go to Ferguson, the right wingers spent years loading up on guns because they know the country's going to be overthrown. They know that. What was it called? Fast and Furious. The big investigation that Republicans had about the gun running. That was out of Arizona, and they was running thousands of guns to Mexico. Well, the United States had a big investigation. You haven't heard the Mexican government say anything, right?
No.
You got our Congress. That's what the Attorney General stepped down from, Fast and Furious. And it wasn't even their fault. That started under Bush. But naturally, if you go into the Justice Department, you go and beg the folks who's running it, give us these documents, right? Now, do you remember when in Phoenix, Arizona, the Congress lady got shot? She didn't die. She just was paralyzed.
Right.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Do you remember the federal judge that was killed that day?
No.
Yeah, well, you should look that up, because that's very important. He was coming out the Safeway, and they shot him by what the New York Times and Washington Post, nobody tell you, He was the federal judge running the Fast and Furious. He was the one telling them to bring that in here. Now, how can somebody be this important and nobody told us who he was? Huh?
Wow.
And so this is what's going on. See, when you have a white, racist, sexist, insane system, do you realize the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment legally gave black folks the right to vote before a white woman? I mean, do you realize what this country is about? Huh? This country is about? I mean, that's his mama, that's his daughter, that's his wife, man. And so when you stop and think about the craziness you have, comes out of slavery, comes out of doing a certain thing to another human being and call yourself a Christian. That don't work. I mean, why do you think all these soldiers is coming back home with all these different syndromes? They lying to us. About 35 veterans commit suicide every day. Every day. Every day. Why? If you don't believe in God, if you don't go to church, if you don't do nothing, living in America, you don't have to believe. You hear, thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not kill. You hear that before you hear about loyalty to your country. So if you go to war and have never gone to church, don't believe in none of that, down at the bottom of your pit of your brain is thou shalt not kill. You heard your mother say it, you heard your father say it, they're atheists. You know, that's part of the 10th Commandment. So all of that is laying in your head when you come back. All the people you've seen killed and wounded and injured, that's where you're going crazy. That's what this is about. We're a country that votes for the lesser of the two evils. And there is a universal God. I'm not talking about the Catholic Church. Catholic Church ain't built no mountains. Baptist Church, you know, ain't created trees. And so that same universal God that put the whole universe together. I mean, I looked at stuff when I was a child. I had a daddy. He was no good, man. No good. Vicious, hustler, and then they tell me, my mom and them said that if I don't behave and be good in life, I'll end up going to hell. I'll burn for the rest of my life. I said, oh, Mom, I don't want to hear that. I was 9 years old. If God, can burn me, the same God that tells me I should forgive and forgive and forgive and I shouldn't kill, if that God to do that to me, and I know my no do it, Daddy couldn't throw no gasoline and do that to me, who do I want to be with, Something ain't right about this statement, I didn't turn against capital punishment until I was able to see what it's about. When I was a child going to the movies, when a movie came out and had capital punishment in it, who did I see leading them to the electric chair? The Catholic priest. So as a little boy, how could I believe that a Catholic priest could lead you to the electric chair and could be something wrong with it? And so all of this now is about to flush out. And we fixing to go through a hell of a thing. And there's a lot of right-wingers that believe, you know, that this thing is just about, that's why since Columbine, gun sales in the American white community includes 41%. Well, what they getting guns for? The little high school children? And then if we listen to what they're telling us and buy into it, they talk about how violent black folks are. And yet, we ain't never went to school with a gun and tried to kill the whole class, the whole school. I'm going there and get this brother that took my girlfriend to the prom. So if you go back and listen or dig it up, see, I have an unfair advantage because I have a research team. I have a research team in the country. I'm the one who released the pictures with Ron Brown with the bullet in the back of his head. He was the first black person to become Secretary of Commerce. He's supposed to have died in a plane wreck. When I released that, the government couldn't say anything about it because the white folks that did the autopsy at the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology brought them to me. Huh? So it wasn't just some pimp walking down the street saying, man, I got some pictures for you. Huh? Me and Mark Lane, we did the book that called The Kennedy King Assassination Investigation. Huh? And so when you sit and look, while they got everybody hating everybody, and the big boys is running a game down on everybody doing anything they want to do.
So it seems like you're saying they're trying to provoke racial tension between black people and white people. Meanwhile, the big boys
they don't have to try to provoke it, huh? They don't have to try to provoke it. It's been there,
right?
Okay, but I'm saying. When you hear black folks saying, you know, the riots, they call it rebellion. There ain't no rebellion. Come on, y'all. You mean you running a rebellion, that's the only way it gets triggered off when a white cop kill a black person, and you think you rebelling? It's a riot. When them white children go to football games, homecoming games, and they team win or lose, they tear up the town. They ain't never lied and said this is rebellion. At all. So we say it. Why? Because, you know, white folks put down riots. They don't put down riots when their children's doing it. Huh? You go to them big white cars, especially the southern ones, homecoming, them white businessmen board up their stuff and get the hell out of town, man. Because they know what's going to happen Saturday after the game. This is America. If you ever drove down the highway and passed a paper mill, there is no stink like a paper mill. But the people that work there don't smell it. They're used to it. Well, we black folks are the same way. We've been in this filth with this white boy so long. Huh? We don't smell nothing. We part of it. Huh? Why do you think you can't pick up the paper, turn on TV, and see white families crying? Cause we got thousands of black cops in America. You ain't never heard white folk complaining that the two black cops shot my son and my daughter and my husband in the back of the head 40 times. Why, you think we more spiritual? You think we better trade? No. Black folks and the white folks ain't going to tolerate it. And when we stop tolerating it, which is going to be difficult to do, we stop tolerating it. Huh? It's hard. Because we the only group of people in the history of the planet that went through what we went through by other human beings. And then we opt for education over liberation, man. Every black person you pass tomorrow, not liberated, okay? And George Washington wasn't beating up on the British for the right to open up a college. The song don't say, give me education, give me death. Say, give me liberty or give me death, huh? And so all of it's getting flushed out now. That's what Hitler and the Nazis, after they came to power. Germans voting for the lesser of the two evils. You vote enough for the lesser of the two evils, you end up with the evil of the evil. Huh?
So do you think at this point, because some people, you know, there's sort of a difference of opinion. Some people say it's useless to vote. Some people say, our ancestors, our grandparents, whatever, they fought for the right to vote. So we should honor that we have the right to vote and go out and vote. Do you see it as being useless, or should we? No.
I'm not going to answer that. I'm going to say it this way. When you vote for the lesser of the two evils, damn what your ancestors said, huh? That's a violation, man. I just told you that's how Hitler and the Nazis got in. Huh? Anytime you run like that last presidential election, both sides spent $1 billion to get a job that don't pay $300,000. You don't have to be bright and be stupid and figure that out. Huh? Here, they cut the food stamps But they give the president anything he wants to send ammunition to the war zone. But I'm saying that's where it's happening. You get so numb, you can't even ask decent questions. That's all of America. All of America. And you got some slimy, degenerate, billionaire punk that owns the Washington football team. And he don't see nothing wrong with insulting Indians, Native Americans. And the President of the United States, the most powerful person on the planet, asked him to change the name. Remember that?
Yeah.
And tried to act like he was the president. Well, president got payback this weekend. Did you see where the FDA and all of them went into them locker rooms looking for drugs? You mess with the president if you want. Now, what did that message say? It said to all professional football owners, okay? You're going to let that boy mess around and get y'all busted. They've been doing what they was looking for the other day, 50 years. And so that's the game. He is the president of the United States, whether they like it or not. And you going to mess around and make him mad just because he acts like, he'll tolerate it? No.
I want to talk to you a little bit about what some people feel as though is ruining this generation of children, and that is TV. I recently, somebody sent me a clip of.
Wait, ho. You know what I thought you was gonna say?
What?
Chemicals in their food.
Well, that was next. I was gonna ask you about my
No. Nothing ruins them. Huh? All children is not watching TV. Most of children, when you go home tonight, look in the tomorrow, just stop by the store and get you a can of June peas, right? Now, what you gonna buy?
June peas.
And then look at the word ingredients, right? Now again, what you gonna buy?
June peas.
And when you look at the word ingredient, it's 16 words in there, of which 50 of them we can't even pronounce.
Right.
But you give them to your children anyway. We don't know what the words are. Do you know if you and I was in Europe today and I was selling crack and you was selling Vaseline, petroleum jelly, but you get more time than me. Did you hear me?
This is in Europe, you're saying?
Yeah. You know why?
Why?
What's it called? Vaseline what?
Petroleum.
Is that gasoline?
Yeah.
Okay. People put on their babies, one day or putting on their babies, people put on their body, on their lips and stuff. This is America. And when you get home tonight, look at your toothpaste, the warning. If you swallow more than a pea size of this, contact the Poison Control Center, because the ordinary doctor do not have the education to save you. Not me. I'm telling you to look at it, That's what this is about. Television, they said the same thing about radio.
Well, not reality TV, not television. I didn't finish the question. So they were talking about reality TV, this new genre. Is no longer like scripted television. They're saying it's reality TV, and it's totally different from the branch of television that I or you watched when we were younger. So they're saying it's a whole new thing out where
Let me say this: I never heard white folk and black folk complaining about lynching. What effect do this have on the children?
Explain that to me. What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
I'm 82 years old, man. I've never had all the shows I do. Nobody ever asked me, do you think lynching has an effect on the children? Hmm?
Okay, I see you.
But this is the times. Let me take it like another way. What effect do automobiles have on American life? Well, look at all the killings, huh? Look at all the automobile accidents, right? Right? Fatalities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody asked about what effect you think this has. Huh? Look at drugs. I don't hear nobody calling up on these shows. What effect do you think drugs have on the children? Do you remember the Trayvon Martin case?
Yeah.
You remember that he was going to the 7-Eleven to get some Skittles? Remember that?
Yes.
And Arizona iced tea. Have you ever in your life dealt with a murder, a homicide, and they told you more what they bought at the store than they told you about the homicide? Huh?
No, that's a good point.
Okay. Now, you probably had to get some young folks to look this up. Skittles, put in a glass, and pour Arizona iced tea in it, and drink it. You get a high 3,000 times more potent than crack, cocaine, and heroin. Okay. All right.
Interesting.
That's what the game is about. About 300 years ago, American scientists and archaeologists, they went to Colombia, South America, because they didn't understand. Forgot the word I'm trying to say. I'll think of it in a minute. Hieroglyphics, okay? And so they went there 300 years ago, and they copied down and drew pictures of what was on the wall. So it was another 150 years before they developed a system where they could understand hieroglyphics, okay? And here's what they copied 300 years ago. White man, one day, the white lady going to do to your children what you doing to ours. And 300 years ago, cocaine wasn't called the white lady, okay? The number one drugged out state in America. Because they kind of put faces on things. Negative place, they put faces of black folks on. The number one drug addicted with more drug addicts than any state in America is Vermont. 99% white folks. What did they say 300 years ago? White man, one day the white lady gonna do to your children what you doing to ours, huh? So we sent a research team up there. That gave me a contact to some folks to interview. We interviewed this one white girl and said, with the horror of what's going on drug-wise, could you explain to me? She said, no, I can't explain to you. All I know is every 10 people I know have either OD'd from drugs or been in a treatment center, okay? And then it was like, I guess 3 months ago, you can Google this. When I say you, I'm talking about you people listening on the radio. The Attorney General of the United States had a press conference 3 months ago and released this statement. More Americans. See, Americans is a code word for white folks. You see, when you talk about the National Medical Association, that's black. During the original segregation days, anything national, that was black. Anything American, the American Bar Association, okay, the American Teachers Association. So when the Attorney General said 3 months ago at a press conference, more Americans die every year from heroin overdose than all the automobile fatalities and homicides put together. Is that wild? Don't nobody seem to be upset about it. So that's what the game is. And they know what they're doing. Did you ever see the movie The Wizard of Oz?
Yeah, when I was a kid, yeah.
Yeah, go back and see it again. That's about the Kansas City Federal Reserve. You ever see the movie King Kong?
Yeah.
That was about the greatest heavyweight boxer in the history of the planet, Jack Johnson. It's about Jack Johnson and his white women. It starts off with in New York, right?
Yeah.
Why would the gorilla go to New York? Ain't no trees, and Lord no, ain't no bananas, because Madison Square Garden is the heavyweight boxing champ of the world. So they use symbols. Symbols. They tell me, and we stupid enough to believe it, that if I got 10 children, if I have a black father just walk away from my wife and get a divorce, it's going to affect the children, right? And they keep saying the problem in the black community, ain't no black man at home. Have you ever heard that before?
Yeah.
But if they draft me into the army and I get killed, they don't act like anything's going to affect my children. Why? Because I'm dying for white folks. I have never heard them say the effect of being killed in the military will affect your children. And so when you go back to see, anytime you have progress, man, when Elvis Presley came through, he couldn't work television. The biggest variety show was Ed Sullivan. Ed Sullivan, because he's shaking his hips and all that. And now they've all been dead, and they play about him so much and talk about him so much, you think he never died. That's what time do. The rhythms change. Oh, you hear people now talking about the Christian church and how many young folks don't read the Bible. All you got to do, stupid, is get a rap group, I'm talking about no big one, and rap the Bible. These youngsters will learn that Bible from front to back in less than 30 days, And so I'm worried about TV. I was born before TV. I had no father at home. My mother worked 2 jobs starting the second week in January. 2 jobs to save the money to buy us Christmas. Put on the layaway, and she had to pay extra for keeping it there on the layaway. Paid extra because of credit. My mother, and she gave it to me and told me a white boy brought it. The Ku Klux Klan didn't tell me Santa Claus. That my mother told me that, okay? That was before television, My mother. My mother didn't know King James was King of England. She just thought King James was just sent down by God to do this book. My mother didn't know King James was such a weird, strange homosexual. He hated women so bad he killed his mother. His lover was Lord Buckingham, who Buckingham Palace named after her. If my mother walked into your studio tonight, if she was alive, she's so precious and kind and spiritual, you think God just spit her out. But if you tried to convince my mother that Jesus Christ wasn't a Christian, she'd stomp you to death, because she didn't know Christianity never happened to 300 years after Jesus Christ was dead. And we're going to talk about TV.
What's your take, Brother Gregory, on Monsanto? You mentioned food earlier.
Monsanto?
Yeah.
That's probably one of the evil forces on the planet, Monsanto. That's why they food can't go to Europe. They call it Frankenstein food. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you how this works. I'm like 82 when I was a little boy. In school, every room had a thermometer in it. You ever seen those thermometers with that gray? You know that's mercury, right?
Right, yeah, mercury.
Mercury. Now we found out mercury is so poison that if you had a filling made out of mercury, you just can't go to the dentist and get that filling taken out. You have to go. The dentist got to call the EPA. The EPA will send them a box, a special box to put in, and they got to send it right back to them, and it got to be specially destroyed. Did you hear me?
Yeah.
Do you know these vaccines? You can go into the grocery store and go to Safeway and get a vaccine. They don't even make a good piece of meat. I'm going to trust them with a vaccine. But you know what the preservatives they use to preserve all of these inoculation shots? It's mercury. Did you hear me?
Yeah, mercury.
Huh?
Yeah, mercury.
One day, when you just sit around, punch up Google, where did the Ebola come from? Germany. It was invented in Germany, and not during the Nazi era. Just about 30 years ago. When are we gonna get the cure? Punch up Google the patent that a guy filed with the patent company to cure Ebola. In San Diego, they punch it up to give you the number, the date it was filed, and the patent number.
Interesting. Well, is there anything you could recommend us as far as, eating? Because last time you gave
about what?
As far as things we could be eating for our body, because last time you told us about the importance of water and, our body weight and how much we should drink in comparison to our body weight. Yeah. And a lot of people was happy. They called me and they was like, I feel better after listening to Gregory, and I've been drinking much more water. And even myself, I've been drinking much more water. Well, so I noticed the difference.
The 3 causes of death in America, right? Number 1, sleep deprivation. On this planet, we're supposed to go to bed 90 minutes after the sun go down. And your brain starts getting charged, just like when you plug your battery up and it gets charged.
Yeah.
All the sleep you get after midnight don't count. So if you have a job and you work in the 3rd shift, the midnight shift, right? You hear me?
Yeah.
So if you work in the midnight shift, that's called what shift?
The late night shift? Overnight?
The graveyard shift.
Graveyard, right.
Graveyard means what?
Dead.
Death, okay? Okay, see how it works? That's the number 1 killer. Number 2 is dehydration. Number 3, lack of physical fitness. Lack of physical fitness. And so if you took care of those, see, then live thousands of years. But when you mess with the brain, all them neurons in the brain, the second amount of neurons in your body is in your stomach. Where you ever hear the word the gut feeling?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Neurons. And what's whiskey and Kool-Aid and Pepsi-Cola? If you cut your head open, man, and pour that stuff, whiskey and Pepsi-Cola and Kool-Aid in your brain, you'd be dead a minute. So the neurons in your belly is the same thing. And so when you talk about, Kansas, I think that this company, that Frankenstein company's in St. Louis, they're poisoning the whole world. Anybody stupid enough to eat it. I don't know if I told you last time we was on, more people, the number one cancer group in America is vegetarians. Because they wasn't supposed to eat soy. George Washington Carver.
Yeah.
Huh?
You mentioned that, I remember, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And those that didn't hear, all I got to do is Google the horrors of soy. It'll pop right up on your screen.
Now, you said something interesting in Hidden Colors 3 when I was watching it. You said George Washington Carver was, I guess the term is castrated?
Yeah, George Washington Carver was born in Missouri, and they had people stealing, kidnapping, selling them. So they kidnapped him, his mother, his father. And in the middle of the night on the buckboard, George Washington's little boy fell off. And some folks found him the next day and carried him to the places where they take care of children. So they ended up, a white family from Iowa adopted him. So we ain't talking about for slavery, just adopt him. He's part of the family. And so when George Washington Carver, the only time he ever been around black folks was when he went to Tuskegee. And so when he gets to Tuskegee, everybody there thought he was gay because his high-pitched voice, his non-associating with women. But he'd rather for you to believe he was gay than let you know what really happened. Only his close friends. Them white folks that adopted him had him castrated when he was 7 years old, so he couldn't have no sexual nothing with their daughters.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that you elaborated on it just now. Quite interesting. The hour's just about up. I want to thank you once again for coming on the show and dropping some stuff that I haven't heard before, as usual. So I definitely appreciate it. You got anything coming up you want the people to know about?
No. Me and Paul Mooney's been doing a lot of shows together around the country, and I can't tell you how much fun I have with that.
Yeah, Paul Mooney's definitely a funny guy.
Yeah.
I got to try to get him on here one day. But I appreciate it as usual, Dick Gregory. And I guess, I'll call you within a month or so. You can fill us in on some recent news and talk to us only how you got
to do is call my wife. You want to get Dick Gregory, call my. I wake up in the morning and call her and ask her, where am I?
I hear you, brother. I hear you.
The two most powerful forces in the history of America has always been the black woman and the black church. If you look at the civil rights movement, the greatest movement in the history of this planet, we took on the greatest, mightiest nation in the world with no guns, no evil, and 98% of the people in the forefront of the civil rights movement had Reverend in front of their name before they had PhD.
Right.
And a black sister is the only woman on the planet can take a butter knife and cut your tires to the rim.
You always tell me that.
She ain't been to school for it. That tire she cut, man. The white folks guarantee that for 20 years. That don't mean nothing to the sister. All she asked you was, who's Melba?
Who's Melba?
So, brother, thank you much. Thank you, and thank you for your audience. And thank you for just doing what you're doing. Putting some